Why the JFK magic bullet theory is history's greatest fairy tale. The magic bullet theory is so vital to the truth about the JFK assassination. The Warren Commission knew that proving the magic bullet theory to be merely possible would support its lone gunman conclusion, whereas proving the magic bullet theory to be not possible establishes beyond doubt that President Kennedy was assassinated by multiple gunmen. If we took no other evidence into regard and solved only the flight path and damage caused by Commission Exhibit 399 at Wright, we would settle once and for all the question of President Kennedy being murdered by one or more assassins. The Warren Commission concluded that the bullet at left, Commission Exhibit 399, caused all 7 non-fatal wounds inflicted on both President Kennedy and Governor John Connally. According to the Warren Commission, per this diagram, bullet 399 did the following: struck JFK in the upper middle back, exited JFK's throat just below the Adam's apple, struck Connally in the back, broke off his 5th right rib, exited Connally's chest, shattered his right wrist, penetrated his left thigh only a short distance, then fell out onto his stretcher at Parkland Hospital. Commission 399 at Wright is required to have caused all 7 survivable wounds on 2 men, including 2 broken bones, and yet emerged in nearly perfect condition with only 2.3 grains of metal missing at the nose. One reason it is called the magic bullet. So as you can see here, this bullet is in pristine condition except for 2.3 grains of metal missing in the nose area. And that was it. The other reason CE-399 is called the magic bullet is because of the flight path it is required to have taken to have inflicted the known damage on JFK and Connally, which will be discussed momentarily. The Warren Commission knew that bullet 399 had to have caused all 7 non-lethal wounds on Kennedy and Connally in order to conclude that Lee Harvey Oswald was the lone assassin that tragic day in Dallas. Why? If Commission Exhibit 399 did not cause all the non-fatal wounds on the 2 men via the flight path shown at Wright, there had to be more than one gunman in Dealey Plaza. Why is this so? In Zapruder frame 227, JFK emerges from behind the traffic sign inside the yellow circle. His hands are going to his throat in reaction to being winded by the bullet striking his upper back. Governor Connally, seated in front of JFK, says he has not yet been hit by a bullet, but the commission says he has been hit by a bullet, the same bullet that struck JFK. In Zapruder frame 236, in the yellow circle, exactly 1/2 of a second after JFK is seen reacting in frame 227, Governor Connally reacts to his 5 non-fatal wounds, including a shattered rib and wrist. Kennedy continues to react to a shot that would not have killed him. Connally says Zapruder frame 236 at left is the earliest he reacts to his non-lethal wounds, again inside the yellow circle. His right shoulder buckles, his hair is askew, he releases his Stetson cowboy hat, he shouts out in pain, and he recoils toward the lap of his wife Nellie. As the Zapruder film shows in frame 236, Kennedy and Connally react to their non-fatal wounds no more than 1 second apart, sooner than it takes to manually operate Oswald's rifle, aim, and then fire the next shot. Since JFK and Connally react to their wounds within 1 second of each other, only 2 scenarios are possible. 1. Governor John Connally was struck by the shot that first hit President Kennedy in the upper back, fired from above and behind the limousine. Or 2. Governor Connally was struck by a separate shot fired almost simultaneously to the first shot. This shot had to be fired by a second assassin also to the rear of the limousine. The Warren Commission had to adopt scenario number 1, or admit that Lee Oswald was part of a sinister conspiracy to assassinate the 35th President of the United States. Since the FBI determined that Oswald's rifle could not be fired twice in less than 2.3 seconds, and the two men reacted to their wounds no more than 1 second apart, the Commission created this necessary magical flight path of Bullet 399 to name Oswald as the lone assassin of JFK. So, why was this fantastical flight path presented as fact? And what evidence did the Commission dismiss, ignore, alter, or suppress to accept the magic bullet flight path in support of Oswald being JFK's lone assassin? First, the Commission had to ignore the official JFK autopsy report and FBI autopsy report. It then had to deliberately alter the bullet entry wound on JFK's back per the official autopsy face sheet at right. And on the face sheet here, we can see the bullet entry wound indicated right here in the upper back. Per this autopsy report face sheet, we see a 7x4mm bullet entry wound documented as being located 5 3/4 inches below Kennedy's collar line and approximately 1 inch to the right side of the spinal column. The official naval autopsy report and FBI autopsy report both state that when surgeon Dr. James Humes probed this wound with his pinky finger, he could feel the end of the opening and that it did not penetrate past his second knuckle. Finding no bullet via his physical probing of the shallow wound prompted Dr. Humes to note in his report, the missile entering at this point traveled only a short distance and likely fell out of the wound during external cardiac massage at Parkland Hospital. This conclusion would cause quite the dilemma the next day when Dr. Humes at left had a phone conversation with Parkland Hospital's Dr. Malcolm Perry at right. This shocking phone call would lead to the unsubstantiated fabrication of the magic bullet theory in support of a lone gunman, and the Warren Commission's need to ignore or even alter evidence that proved the magic bullet theory to be a made-up fairy tale. The location of the bullet entry wound in JFK's upper back, being 5 3/4 inches below the collar line and just to the right of the spinal column, per this autopsy face sheet, is verified by a key witness and irrefutable physical evidence, such as Secret Service agent Clint Hill, who helped remove clothes from JFK for surgery, said this when asked under oath if he saw any wound on the president other than the head wound. Yes, sir. I saw an opening in the back about 6 inches below the neckline to the right side of the spinal column. The suit jacket worn by JFK that day confirms that the bullet entry wound in the upper back is exactly where the two autopsy reports and Agent Hill place it to be. A hole in the president's shirt perfectly matches the hole in the suit jacket seen here. However, during the phone call the next day, what Dr. Perry told Dr. Humes would cause the magic bullet theory to emerge and change everything, starting with the need to alter the location of the bullet entry wound on JFK's upper back. Dr. Perry stunned Dr. Humes by informing him that the neck tracheostomy incision the autopsy team observed, as shown at right, in fact, it obliterated an already existing small circular wound at the middle of JFK's throat, just below the Adam's apple. To stabilize the president's breathing by inserting a tracheal tube, Dr. Perry had to make an existing small neck wound his point of incision, as illustrated at left, leaving the wound that appears at right. The illustration at right, presented by Robert Groden in his book The Killing of a President, shows the small circular throat wound described by Dr. Perry to Dr. Humes, which meant the autopsy report did not account for all the wounds sustained by President Kennedy. How did Dr. James Humes react to learning that his autopsy report missed the wound on JFK completely, failed to identify it as a possible bullet wound, or the flight path that caused it? He burned his autopsy notes in his home fireplace and revised his report based on pure assumption. As a result, the nature of the two non-fatal wounds on JFK changed as follows. Upper back wound. Despite all the evidence placing the back entry wound 5 3/4 inches below the collar line, the Commission moved this wound up to the base of the neck, per Commission Exhibit 385 at right, to make it higher than the throat exit wound and better align with the shot coming from above and behind. Throat wound. Despite the JFK throat wound being more characteristic of an entry wound, the Warren Commission declared it to be a bullet exit wound, so it could claim that CE-399 did transit JFK and went on to strike Connally and inflict all of his wounds. As Commission Exhibit 385 shows, the magic bullet theory is born, despite all the documented evidence that says the entry wound was much lower than what CE-385 shows, and that the bullet did not even transit the body. However, for the magic bullet theory to be correct, the trajectory of bullet 399 is required to be even more magical in two ways: upon striking President Kennedy and before continuing on to strike Governor Connally. The magical flight path of bullet 399. Bullet 399 strikes President Kennedy where an eyewitness, two autopsy reports, and matching bullet holes in his suit jacket and shirt placed the entry wound to be 5 3/4 inches below the collar line and slightly to the right of the spinal column. Although the FBI autopsy report and the official naval autopsy report both state that the entry wound hole in JFK's upper back penetrated only a short distance, the Commission concluded bullet 399 did transit JFK's body after all. As shown at right, even if the Warren Commission is correct, a downward traveling bullet 399 that strikes JFK in the upper back is required to move upward inside JFK's body, despite not hitting bone or any hard substance, so it can exit JFK's throat just below the Adam's apple. If the Commission's flight path of bullet 399 is to be believed, the bullet is required to exit JFK's throat at a steep upward trajectory and then make a sudden downward turn in midair to strike Connally's back near the right armpit. So as you can see in this illustration, the bullet enters the back where all the evidence places it, 5 3/4 inches below the neckline, and then travels upward inside JFK's body, even though the evidence suggests it didn't even transit the body. Let's say it did. And then it exits the JFK throat at an upward trajectory and then must travel downward to strike the governor, hence known as the magic bullet. In addition to a sudden downward trajectory change in midair after exiting JFK's throat, bullet 399 is also magically required to pause as much as 1 full second in midair before striking Connally in the seat in front of JFK. According to the Commission, bullet 399 strikes Connally near his right armpit, shatters his fifth right rib, exits his chest below the right nipple, strikes his right wrist, shattering his distal radius bone, then penetrates his left thigh only a short distance. The Commission concludes that the bullet at right falls out of the governor's shallow leg wound due to the commotion at Parkland Hospital and lands on his stretcher, where it is found and turned over to the FBI and becomes Commission Exhibit 399. The magic bullet theory would have us believe that CE-399 flew a highly improbable trajectory to inflict all the wounds attributed to it. But that's not all that would make this bullet magical. Most magical of all, in support of its claim that Lee Oswald was the lone assassin, the Commission would also like us to believe that Bullet 399 caused all 7 non-lethal wounds on the 2 men and emerged fully intact with only 2.3 grains of metal missing at the nose, as you see on the bullet at right. If Bullet 399 at right did cause all the survivable wounds on JFK and Connally and emerged in pristine condition, then it is possible that one assassin could have acted alone on November 22nd, 1963. However, the Commission's own ballistic tests by the FBI, displayed at right, failed to validate the single bullet theory, compelling the Commission to ignore the following test results. The 2 far right test bullets were fired from Oswald's rifle into the rib cage of a goat and wrist of a human cadaver. Both produced similar wounds to those on Connally, but each test bullet showed greater damage than CE-399 at far left. The Commission hoped that if it could show this type of bullet could cause the most severe wound in Connally's wrist, it could reasonably conclude that the bullet could also cause all the lesser wounds in the 2 men. However, the test bullet fired only into the wrist of a human cadaver, Commission Exhibit 856 at right, was severely more damaged than CE-399, that supposedly caused 6 other wounds and broke another bone. Only the second and third test bullets from the left that were fired into a large vat of cotton wadding, striking virtually nothing of substance, emerged looking identical to CE-399 at far left. If you believe the magic bullet theory is a fairy tale, then Governor Connally had to have been hit by a second shot after JFK, fired by a second assassin to the rear of the limousine, proving multiple gunmen and a conspiracy to assassinate President John F. Kennedy. Any new formal investigation into the assassination of President John F. Kennedy could very well change the history books by focusing specifically on this one pivotal controversy, the flight path and damage by Magic Bullet 399.